Hey there, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. So this is a forecast for Wednesday, the 22nd of July, 2026. Now, with these forecasts, what I'm really doing is looking at how the planets are talking to each other. I guess the conversations that are taking place. And each week when I'm looking ahead, I'm looking at the Ptolemaic aspects, i.e. the conjunctions, the sextiles, the squares, the trines, and the oppositions that the planets are making. Now, I do also pay some attention to the moon's movements on a daily basis because we get a lot of information about those. And so what we see today on Wednesday, I'm actually recording this on Tuesday, is that we've got two sextiles, and we've also got a trine to Mercury, and we've also got the sun going into the sign of Leo. Now, before we venture into Wednesday, I just want to put some context on, like where are we moving from and to? So if you've watched Tuesday's forecast, you might have remembered me talking about thunderous orgasms or this like pressure that's being built up. And it almost feels like we've got so much pressure, something's going to burst or something's going to come forwards. Now, is that going to be a really enjoyable release? How does this fit in? Well, in these daily ones, I like to also refer back to what I'm noticing within my community, what people are reporting, and also my own experiences. And I almost feel like I'm reading these for myself because a lot of those themes have already taken place on Tuesday. And that sense of growing anticipation is already released for me in a multitude of ways. So as we're coming into Wednesday, it's from that perspective of maybe having worked something out. We're under incredible tension on Tuesday, with the moon going into a square with the sun, a square with Jupiter, going into Scorpio, which is really kind of a bit on the moody side, and in opposition to Chiron and later square to Pluto. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of tension. And so when we're looking into Wednesday, the moon is already in Scorpio. Okay, it's an intense sign. There's a certain amount of intensity. As the day starts, there's a lovely, I think, approving trine to the North Node. And the North Node is just hanging on in there in the sign of Pisces. By next week, it's going to be moving into the sign of Aquarius. So this is actually, if I work this out, I'm pretty sure this is the last big aspect, like this is the last trine between the moon and the North Node across these two water signs before the North Node moves. So to me, this is also a summing up. This is a summing up of how we can be in flow, how we can experience a sense of ease. Now, it's interesting when I talk about ease, am I talking about, okay, I'm in a place of ease now and forever. Have I attained this? Like it's some kind of static emotion. And I'm not really talking about that. What I'm talking about is how can we tune into ease? How can you tune into ease? Is that something that you're able to do? I think over, in particular, the last 5 years, which have been quite tumultuous from my perspective, from my lived experience. One of the things that's recently come in for me is going into a sense of ease or into a sense of calm. Like when you realize there's not much you can actually do to change events other than just change your mind or change the way you're feeling, that actually gives you some power. And so to me, this is reminding us that we can practice our power. We can practice sitting still for a minute or whatever it is that helps you feel calm. For me, I like to sit outside in the mornings and just really enjoy the fresh air on my body. I just absolutely love that feeling of freshness. For you, it could be something completely different, but whatever it is that you've got, and it might be different, it might be changing. Like the last few days I've gone to the Atlantic Ocean with my family and gone in for a little dip, and that's been really nourishing. So you might have a few things that help you feel into the flow and help you just forget about whatever troubles you've got. I think when we can purposefully and consciously go into the flow, I think this is a good practice. And so, yeah, there's this encouragement to flow with things, to recognize that we don't have to feel things. Now, obviously, as you can see, we're going into this, you'll see that the moon is actually still in that square with Pluto and also in that tight T square with Jupiter, but it's going to be moving out of that. So, and for most of the day, the moon is going to be moving away from this, not into it. So we are at a release point. How can you feel the flow? Now, as the moon continues moving, and it's quite a little bit later on in the day, there's a sextile to Venus. Now, Venus is in the sign of Virgo. And so I really think where we've got intense feelings, how can Virgo serve you in a natural way? How can you do something that's going to help your body feel into natural vibes? One thing that I always think of with, Virgo, I think, especially Venus in Virgo, there's an encouragement to enjoy some simplicity. How could you just lie on the beach or lie on some grass or sit under trees and watch them moving? To me, it's like, how can you consciously build in a moment of reflection and a moment of space for yourself, a bit of independence? At the same time, the moon is going into, it says a sextile to Saturn, but that's not true. I've answered my own question. It's not a sextile to Saturn, it's an inconjunct, also known as a quincunx. The symbols for sextiles and inconjuncts look almost the same, and obviously I need to get my eyes tested. So the moon is going to go into an inconjunct with Saturn, which is one of these green dotted lines. Now, I don't normally talk about these within these forecasts unless there's a real reason to. And the inconjunct's interesting because the moon and Saturn, Saturn's, you could say, the adult in the room, your parental self, and the moon can be very much your childlike self. Now, they're in different elements. They're in different quadruplicities. What I mean is in the sign of Scorpio, it's a fixed water sign, and Saturn in the sign of Aries, that's a fire, and it's a cardinal sign. And so these two planets aren't working in the same way at all. They're working in a very, very different way, but it's not like an opposition. It's not something that's easy to kind of spot because you're feeling really pulled apart. It's not a square giving you high levels of tension. It's just this kind of slight oddity that's going on between the signs of Scorpio and Aries, which is kind of interesting because both of these are ruled by Mars. And so what I would say here, and this is happening a little bit after the sextile with Venus, we've got the moon in Scorpio feeling a little bit broody, a little bit brooding, deeply sensitive, and it's in a slightly uncomfortable position with your responsible self. Maybe you feel like right now that there's things that you need to do that are easy to understand from an adult parental perspective, but also that are kind of selling out the inner child. There's something that the inner child inside you wants to do or understand, and your adult self can't quite focus on it. Now, given that Aries and Scorpio are both, I would say, very, they're signs that move the story and conversation along. To me, what this is suggesting is later on in the day, there's a feeling of something that can't quite be settled within you. There's something that just doesn't feel very definite. So if you're being encouraged to make a decision about something on Wednesday afternoon, later on in the day is really when you're feeling it, I would encourage some caution. Now, after that, a couple of hours later, you'll get I think, a clear sign when the moon goes into a trine with Mercury. So when you feel like you can talk about it, when you feel like you've got space to think through a decision and to talk about it and explore it from all different angles, I think that would be the best time for you to then actually make a decision. Now, again, Mercury is right almost at the end of his retrograde activity. So you might not want to sign off on that, on your new decisions, until maybe early into next week, or at the very earliest, maybe on the 24th on Friday. You might want to give Mercury a little moment just to change directions. But to me, what's really coming out is, there are maybe unanswered questions that you would like to complete on, but until you feel like you can actually verbalize them, pick through them, and feel really sort of integrated in your own conversation. I think it's hard. It's almost as if, later on the day on Wednesday, you're in two minds. On the one hand, you've got this need to be deeply, to make a conscious decision that feels deeply in alignment with what your inner child is looking for. And then on the other hand, there's this part of you that's saying, oh, for God's sake, just grow up, make a decision, commit to something. And it's actually encouraging you to rush a little bit. Now, Saturn is not really a rusher. Saturn tends to plan and take action slowly over a period of time. But in the sign of Aries, he's he's a bit of a firebrand. So yeah, I would just take your time until you feel like you can have that internal conversation with yourself, and fully articulate it. It's not time to make a decision. Now, there's something else that's going on Wednesday, and that would be the sun actually going into the sign of Leo. Now, as the sun goes into the sign of Leo, this is going to open up the whole of the Leo season. And of course, these seasons are astrological months, which take us on a journey from 0 Leo right the way to 29, 59, 59 in the sign of Leo before it goes into Virgo. So we've got approximately 30 days. And, when the sun goes into the sign of Leo, the way of processing our personalities is a lot more dramatic than when it was in the sign of Cancer. I mean, don't get me wrong, Cancers do experience drama, but the drama is emotional. The drama is about the past. The drama is about what's remembered and feelings, and it can go really deep. And of course, we've had our Cancer season has had Mercury retrograde, connecting with the sun, and so I do think we're coming out of a time when we've gone through a lot of emotions, and really looked at our past selves, and made some decisions because of it. Now that the sun is going into the sign of Leo, the Leo energies are going to come in. And so the Leo warmth is going to come forwards. We'll feel the heat of the sun. And obviously, lots of us have had big fires, and there's been some very strong weathers over this Cancer period. But I feel like whether the weather is actually hot and steamy where you are, or hot and dry where you are, actually this is talking more about you as a person. Our temperaments are becoming I guess really sovereign. The sun is going to get very, very close to Jupiter. We will have a Jupiter cazimi next week. And this is a time when we're coming into sovereignty. On the 12th, we're going to have a really lovely solar eclipse. So I think as the sun comes into the sign of Leo, we're going to be experiencing quite an upshift, and a lovely energy of being seen, which I spoke about earlier this week. And so, yeah, this is getting things moving. So when we put in there that we might need some time to reflect, we might need to just enjoy being in nature for a little bit. And then when we feel like we have to make a decision, don't rush it. Like, think of the lion, given that it's in Leo, like think of the lion. The lion sleeps allegedly for about 20 hours a day. I've got cats, not exactly a same comparison. I've got 3 cats. They lounge about, they take their time. And then when they're absolutely ready to move, when they're really, really certain about something, they crack on with it and they get it done. So I'm really suggesting here that we languish a little bit. We have a bit of a Leo day. We do rest in nature. We do look at the canopies above us if we're lucky enough to get outside, and sit under the shade of a beautiful tree. But whatever we're doing, I think we need to languish a little bit until we know that we can make a clear decision, maybe one that is bringing us to the end of this whole retrograde experience. So, for instance, Mercury has been retrograde for 3 weeks approximately by this point. If you can remember the train of thought that you've been going through over the last 3 weeks, this will really give you a clue. Maybe you're about to round things up. I know from my own experience of this retrograde, and it's ending on my natal Saturn. So it's definitely been one that's taking me on a journey of responsibility. Like, what am I responsible for? What aren't I responsible for? What am I meant to carry in this world? What am I carrying for other people that actually has got nothing to do with me? It's really given me food for thought. Whatever your pervasive food for thoughts have been, maybe as we go into Wednesday, the 22nd, it's time to bring it to a close. After all, on the 23rd, we are literally coming to the end of the Mercury retrograde for this moment in time. This is asking us to stop. This is asking us, okay, it's saying we don't need to keep looking back over our shoulder again and again. It's time to start looking forwards again. So I think Wednesday, the 22nd and into Thursday, the 23rd, and that is a hell of a strong day with the sun going into an exact square with Chiron. I did speak about this in the earlier forecast, I think, called Be Seen. Yeah, I think we're really ready to make a decision. And of course, later on with the solar eclipse here, the Jupiter Cazimi here, we're going to get lots of opportunities to start shining and to shine with a feeling of natural pride. Nothing to be hidden. There's no need to hide away anymore. You've done enough hiding away. Now is the time for us to relax into a new way of being, even if it's just for a month. Maybe it's actually going to be the start of something new. I hope so. I hope we can start to come out of truly come out the other side of some of the energies that have been with us since the COVID days. When we, I think, the kind of shock that came across the world during that time, I think affects nervous systems. And with Venus in the sign of Virgo, which is a very nervous sign, but really one about rehabilitation. So with this, and then Jupiter having gone past very recently the COVID point, like when COVID started, we had Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter all around here. Jupiter's like moved beyond that, and some's just gone into Leo. This is about us shaking off our post-COVIDisms, for want of a better word. This is about us shrugging our shoulders a little bit and saying, okay, I really am ready to kind of free myself from this now. So I hope that's helpful for you. I hope you're enjoying these daily forecasts as well. If you want to discuss them a little bit, then please feel free to just scan the QR code, come and join me in my community on the school platform. That's where I have my meaningful conversations. If I seem a little abrupt in the comments replying to people, it's because for me, the conversations for people that are really enjoying astrology, they're living there. It feels like a safe container with people who really love what I do and are of a similar mindset. So if that sounds like the kind of place that might feel really good for you to join, then come. So anyway, lots of love to you. Have a great day and speak to you soon. Bye for now.